you ever had a sales appointment where you're like, man, everything went so well. We identified what the problem was. We had the perfect solution. They agreed it was the perfect solution. Yet, for some reason, they ghosted us. Has that ever happened to you? Because if that has happened to you, I'm here to tell you there is a reason and there is a perfect discovery framework that you can use to make sure you stop getting ghosted all the time after you feel like, I don't understand, there was a fit. In fact, this is the most simple and most powerful sales discovery framework I have ever seen in my 25 years of sales coaching. And in this video, I'm going to break down its 3 parts. And by the end, you're probably going to realize, okay, and this is why I have been overcomplicating the sales process. Hey friends, Marcus Sheridan here, and welcome back to the Confident Communicator, where we help sellers and leaders just like you to own the room. That's right, own the room and have that confidence and energy that you need to be the best version of yourself. All right, let's talk today about a problem that I've seen again and again, and that is broken sales discovery frameworks. If you look at most sales discovery, primarily what salespeople are trying to do is identify what the problem is. And sometimes they identify what the impact of that problem is. And generally, after that, what they do is they propose a solution. This is a massive mistake because it's missing one of the most fundamental parts of world-class sales discovery. And I want to break that down for you right now. For me, I have seen, and I don't know how many books on this you've read. I mean, I've seen a bunch, I've read a bunch, but it wasn't until I met someone that became my good friend that it was all very clear to me what I had been missing by reading those sales books over the years. Ian Altman and I met around 15 years ago, and he wrote a book called Same Side Selling, and he's a great sales trainer. Highly recommend him. He specializes in B2B sales. Wonderful, wonderful guy. And he once told me, he said, Marcus, the perfect sales discovery framework is issue, impact, and importance. Those 3 things. Now, before you say, that sounds super basic, just stay with me for a second. This is going to really, really change your career if you lean into the things that I'm going to say. Now, as soon as he said it, I said, issue, impact, importance. That sounds like I3. And he said, I3. Huh. And so from then on, I've called it I3. And I believe Ian calls it I3 today. But I want to credit him with this. Our team at Question First has taught this discovery framework now for years, and it's incredibly, incredibly effective, mainly because, number one, it's so much simpler than what you find with these other systems. Number 2, it covers a missing part that many of these other sales frameworks don't currently have. So let's break down each one of the 3. First one is issue. Now, issue is when we're trying to understand exactly what the problem with the buyer is. What are the frustrations? What are the issues? What would they like to change, etc. Now, the big mistake that we see, and keep in mind that when I share with you anything here about mistakes that we see people making, it's based in the context of we have reviewed now thousands of sales calls. We have trained many different industries. And over again, what we oftentimes see from salespeople that are identifying an issue is they prematurely stop before they identify all the issues. So for example, you say to someone, let's say you're doing, let's say you sell CRM software, and a salesperson says, so what's your biggest frustration with your existing CRM? And the person says, there's a lot of frustrations, but I think my biggest frustration is probably that it's just so complex that my sales guys refuse to use it because it's like you got to be a techie to understand it, right? And then you end up talking about that, and then you move on to what is the impact or the effect that's having on the organization. That's the mistake. What you need to do as a seller is you need to get out all of the issues. So you will consistently go back and say, okay, so is there anything else that is a problem here? Is there any other issue that this is causing, or any other frustration that you're having, whatever that is? Make sure they say, nope, nothing else. You really want to get through that when you're discussing issue. Okay, so issue, this is done by the majority of salespeople, but most stop prematurely. Now, the next phase is impact. Now, impact has two parts to it that you want to make sure you pull from, in this case, the buyer. Impact can be financial. Impact can also be, and often is, emotional or mental, and sometimes it's even physical. So you want to get the financial impact, but you also want those softer impacts, like I said, the emotional ones. So let's say that we were talking with someone about new doors and windows in their home, right? We might say to them, so because these windows are so poorly insulated, what is the financial impact this is having on your monthly electric bill? And the person ends up saying that. The problem is we're not done. We need more impact. Now, we're going to talk about that in a second, but when you're defining impact, and this is very, very important, you want to make sure that when you're talking numbers, you have the prospect tell you the numbers. Don't tell them for them. That's your job to ask the right question. We call this being a pathfinder. So the pathfinder knows how to ask the right question so that the person owns it for themselves. So in other words, if somebody says to you, again, let's say it's windows that we're talking about here, and somebody says to you, from what I can tell, it's probably adding 50% on our electric bill. Then you'd say, okay, so 50% in this case would equate to how much money per month on your electric bill? The person sits there and says, well, that's probably about $200 a month. Okay, so you're saying it's costing you $200 a month. So therefore, on a yearly basis, because of these faulty windows, you're spending how much more on your electric bill than you should? Notice how I didn't say it. We allow the person to say, yeah, I'm probably spending at least $2,400 a year just on additional electric bills that I shouldn't be spending. So do you see what we did there? We made sure they said the numbers. So if we say to someone, again, going back to the CRM side of things, we say to someone, so because your sales team isn't entering any data in the CRM and you don't have good records of your customers, if you had to guess, how much is this potentially costing you in lost business per year? And once again, the person might say, geez, I have no idea. Now, in this moment, if they say, I have no idea, it is your job. Whenever you're doing discovery, the most important discovery question is, but if you had to say, what would it be? If you had to give an answer, what would it be? If you had to make a guess, what would it be? So this is really, really important right now. And this is the question that would come next. So you're going to say to the person, yeah, but if you had to guess how much revenue it's costing you per year, and I know it's going to be a range, but if you had to guess, what would you say? Person says, it's probably costing us, I'd say $250,000 to $500,000 a year in lost revenue. All right. So we're saying that this issue is most likely, that we're trying to solve, is most likely $250,000 to $500,000 problem. Is that accurate? Person says yes, and now we've got the financial. Okay, so that is the financial impact. Now, once again, oftentimes what we see is salespeople will go from that to now solution mode. We don't want to do that because there's more than just financial. There's oftentimes emotional impact. There's a physical impact, right? So for the homeowner, you might say to them, now, in the fact that these aren't insulated well and that they don't look like what you want them to look like and they don't feel like you want them to feel like, how does that affect you personally? What impact does that have on you outside of the numbers? So you see what I did there? Because now we want them to talk about things like, well, I just get frustrated every time I look at it, or it just makes me feel so annoyed that I'm wasting $200 a month, or whatever that is. But we want them to share emotions, to feel the thing. When they've done that, we always want to finish with, now, is there any other impact, physical, financial, emotional, that this is having on you or your business? All right. So now, once that is done, now we've defined issue. That's I1. We've done I2, impact. And this next part is the one that most sales systems don't teach like they should, which is importance. And it's one of the most powerful questions that you can ask during sales discovery. And it's also one that you will oftentimes find the prospect, in this case, will say, wow, that's a really good question. Here's how it might sound. Let's go back to the B2B software. I might say, okay, so let's assume that I do a review of what they said. So what you've told me today is, here is the primary issue that your company is dealing with when it comes to your CRM. And you said, it's costing you this, this, and this, and it's having this type of impact, correct? Okay, now, before we look at any solutions, let's look at maybe the most important question here, and that is this. I'm sure that as a company, you're spinning many other plates right now, trying to solve other problems, trying to put other fires out. And I'm sure you've probably got a list of priorities that you want to solve in 2026 versus the other problems that you're trying to solve. When you look at solving this problem, where does this one fall in terms of priorities? You see it. Now, the person is going to, like I said, they're almost always going to say, wow, I hadn't really, well, I guess this is one of the most important ones. Well, let me give you an example. With our company at Question First Group, I was talking to a very large commercial builder recently that came to us with a leadership training problem. They just didn't have a great leadership training in place, and they understood in the process of our discovery call what the issue and impact was. Core issue that they have no communication training. They have very poor communication as a whole. This means their leaders are less effective. This is causing them turnover. This is causing low morale. Like, it's causing all these things, right? Then the third question, when we said, so I'm sure you're trying to solve other issues as an organization this year. Where does this fall in terms of those others from a priority perspective? And she stopped and she looked up and she said, this is the most important thing we need to solve this year. And friends, when someone says that, guess what? You're never getting ghosted. But the reason why you and your team keep getting ghosted, when you've identified an issue, a problem, a need, and you've identified a solution, and you've agreed to the solution, and even the budget is there, the reason why they're not moving forward is because you didn't define importance. And because you didn't define importance, you did not find out that this was actually number 3 on their list of things they needed to solve. So although it's definitely something that they want to do, it's just not having precedence over those other 2 things. This is why this question is so powerful. And again, when Ian Altman taught me this, I was like, holy cow. It's what I've been missing. It's why I've been ghosted multiple times in my sales career after identifying what I thought was a perfect issue and impact. And so when you do this, now the person is able to say what it is, and you're able to say next, as soon as whatever their answer is, you should always say, and why do you say that? Well, it's the most important thing. Okay, tell me why that is. Well, it's probably the second or third most important thing. Tell me why that is. Now, if it is second or third or fourth, you're able to discuss which is more important, not necessarily with the goal to convince them that you should be a priority solving the problem that you sell, right? But rather to really make sure, are they tracking in the right direction or are they tracking in the wrong direction? If I've got somebody that's saying, hey, we want to blow up our marketing department this year, and we also want to do our sales training, and we have some serious leadership training that we want to do. It's like, it's not gonna work if you try to do them all at the same time. So you're serving too many masters at that point. So it's your job as a pathfinder to make sure you help them understand which path is truly going to be best for their organization. If you define importance, total game changer. Folks, I'm telling you right now, those of you that go back and apply this, you're going to say, why have I not been doing I3 all these years? It's so much simpler than these other sales systems from a discovery standpoint. I'm absolutely going to start to use it. And when you do, you're going to see that does it work? And you're going to create an extraordinary connection with the prospect. And they're going to say things like, no one has ever asked me that before. Wow, I just feel like I've learned so much talking with you, and it's just going to help you so very, very much. Anyway, try i3. Let us know how it goes. Leave your questions in the comments section. Make sure you give this video a like. Make sure you share it with your boss, with your team, because it could make a huge difference in their life as well. Hope you're enjoying this channel. If you want to be that confident communicator, if you want to be the best version of yourself, keep coming back. And as always, make sure you continue to find the path. Thanks so very much.